Begin this morning, though, with the war in Ukraine, where the major port city of Odessa has come under a new Russian attack.
Authorities say one person was killed and 5 were injured when missiles struck a shopping center and a warehouse. The attack comes as President Zelensky warns of a global food crisis if Russia continues to block Ukraine's main ports, which export agricultural products around the world. In Washington, President Biden signed into law the World War II-era Lend-Lease Act. It's aimed at streamlining military aid to Ukraine. Speaking yesterday, the president also said the U.S. is in this for the long haul.
Every day, Ukrainians pay with their lives, and they fight along the atrocities that the Russians are engaging in are just beyond the pale. And the cost of the fight is not cheap, but caving to aggression is even more costly. That's why we're staying in this.
We will hear from the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer, in just a few moments. But before that, let's go to NBC News senior national correspondent Jay Gray, who joins us live from Lviv. Jay, good morning to you. Let's start off in Odessa. What can you tell us about this latest attack and the situation there right now?
Yeah, Vicky, the situation dire there right now. They continue to be pummeled from the air in Odessa. Over the last 48 hours, it's really stepped up dramatically there. Pretty clear that Russian troops are trying to take control of the entire coastline there. And you talked about the blockade of grain being shipped. That's going to become much more of a problem as we move forward here, with Russia really trying to dig in that Odessa area. We had a report from troops on the ground, Ukrainian fighters, that at least 7 of the missiles used during attacks in Odessa were actually Soviet-era missiles. So to them, that's an indication that perhaps the Russians are running a bit low on ammunition. They see that as a good sign and say they'll continue to maintain the course there and resist as tough as possible. And so far, doing a very good job of maintaining their territory there.
Jay, we're also watching Mariupol this morning. There was a small Victory Day ceremony held in that city yesterday, despite the ongoing siege at the steel plant there. What's the latest on those trapped inside? How many are still there?
Well, we're getting reports today that at least 100 civilians are still in the Mariupol area. Now, we don't know that they're inside that steel mill. Over the weekend, Ukrainian officials reported that all of the women, children, and elderly were pulled from that steel mill during the 4th trip by UN teams to try and extract them. They said that they had everyone there, that all that was left was the men from that area and the fighters who were staying and maintaining their resistance there. That has really been a hot point over the last couple of weeks of fighting between Russian troops on the ground and the Ukrainians there, and continues to be. But now we are getting reports of 100 civilians that may still be in that area.
Jay, I want to move away from the battlefield for a moment, and we understand you have been meeting with Ukrainian artisans in Lviv who are making their mark on this war in a very different way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Vicky, pretty amazing to see a group of artists who craft things out of leather and make purses and wallets and things like passport holders. Now turning their attention and their machines toward making equipment for those on the front lines here in Ukraine, making holsters, making grenade sheaths as well, tourniquets for soldiers, and testing it in their facility before it makes its way to the battlefield. It's become a big effort from this group. 50% of what they're doing now is dedicated towards getting supplies to Ukraine fighters on the front lines.
Jay, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Russia has formally warned the United States and its allies against supplying further weapons to Ukraine. The Kremlin said that the arms shipments could lead to what it called unpredictable consequences. Speaking during an interview, President Zelensky has acknowledged that up to 3,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died and as many as 10,000 have been left injured since Russia invaded his country in February. Meanwhile, there have been reports of new strikes on the outskirts of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and also explosions have been heard in the western city of Lviv. And in the last hour, the Russian Foreign Ministry has said that it's banning the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, as well as other senior ministers, from entering Russia over the UK's hostile stance on the war in Ukraine. The BBC's Helena Wilkinson has the report.
This was once one of Russia's most prized warships. Now the Moskva lies at the bottom of the Black Sea. It's a huge blow to the country and its naval power. Ukraine claimed it hit the cruiser with 2 missiles. Russia denied this, saying an explosion on board caused it to sink. The country held a ceremony to mourn its loss. For Ukrainians, the sinking of the warship is a morale boost. Many have queued to buy this stamp, showing a Ukrainian border guard defiantly standing up to the vessel. But there have already been repercussions. Russia says it hit a military facility outside the Ukrainian capital, an attack seen as retaliation. It's threatened more strikes on Kyiv if Ukraine attacks Russian territory. The Kremlin has also issued a warning to the United States and its allies, saying supplying further arms to Ukraine would add fuel to the conflict and could lead to unpredictable consequences. But President Zelensky has issued another call for world leaders to back the Ukrainian effort with weapons.
If someone says a year or years, I answer, you can make the war much shorter. The more weapons we get, and the sooner we get all the weapons we have requested, the stronger our position will be, and the sooner peace will come.
He's also warned the world should be ready for a possible Russian nuclear or chemical attack. Speaking on CNN, he said Russia could do it because people's lives meant nothing to Moscow. As the fighting continues, so too does the grim task of recovering those who've been killed in the war. Ukrainian police say they found the bodies of 900 civilians in the region around Kyiv. The capital remains a target, and there are fears there could be fresh attacks in and around it in the coming days. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Dan Johnson is in Lviv and he gave me more detail about those overnight strikes.
Yeah, explosions reported in one of the suburbs on the edge of Kyiv. The mayor of the city says that emergency teams are responding to that blast. We don't have any confirmation yet of exactly how much damage has been done, whether there are any injuries or loss of life there. There was also an air raid attack on Lviv last night on this city. We're told by local officials that 2 Russian jets launched an attack having flown from Belarus. Apparently 4 missiles were fired at targets in Lviv, but they were shot down by Ukrainian air defences. It's a reminder to people here that even though they're hundreds of miles from the really intense fighting in the east of Ukraine, there are still risks, and Russia had threatened renewed attacks. It said in response to Ukrainian helicopters firing on villages over the border in Russia itself. The suspicion is that Russia is responding to show that its firepower isn't diminished despite the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet having sunk to the bottom of the ocean. We also have that warning from Vladimir Putin, which was messaged to the Americans earlier this week, that if they continue to supply weapons to Ukraine, there could be unintended consequences. President Vladimir Zelensky has talked about the potential for Russia to launch chemical weapons attacks and potentially nuclear attacks as well. But it was after that message was sent to the Americans that they announced further supplies would be sent to reinforce the Ukrainian resistance in expectation of those even greater battles to come in the east of the country. But right across Ukraine, renewed strikes, further air raid warnings and nervousness for people in this country.
We're live in Kyiv as Vladimir Putin tells a huge military parade in Moscow's Red Square that Russian troops in eastern Ukraine are defending the motherland. He said the invasion of this country, what he calls a special military operation, was necessary and had been provoked by the West. But he didn't make any major announcement related to the war or suggest when or how it might end. The Victory Day parade, featuring thousands of troops, tanks and nuclear missiles, commemorates the anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945 and is a reminder of Russia's military might. Our correspondent Jenny Hill has sent us this report from Moscow.
Isolated, sanctioned, condemned, but Vladimir Putin seems sure of Russia's support. Relaxed, smiling as he greeted veterans of conflicts past, even as he wages war in Ukraine. Victory Day is one of the most cherished holidays in the Russian calendar. It's sombre. 27 million Soviets died in the Second World War. But it's a celebration too, a victory over Nazi Germany, and the eyes of the world were on Red Square. Vladimir Putin, unable to declare a victory of his own in Ukraine, railed against the West. He'd been forced to act against his neighbour, he said, out of self-defence.
Preparations were openly underway for another punitive operation in Donbass and an invasion of our historic lands, including Crimea. Kyiv has announced a possible acquisition of nuclear weapons. NATO began active military development of the territories adjacent to ours. This was an absolutely unacceptable threat, systematically created for us and right on our borders.
Fewer troops, less military hardware than usual on display, resources presumably tied up in Ukraine. This was, as always, a display of might intended for the outside world, a less than subtle hint at Russia's nuclear arsenal.
За победу! Ура!
But today was about rallying Russians too. Vladimir Putin has repeatedly tried to justify his war by telling them that Nazis in Ukraine threaten their country's peace, using Russia's painful past to legitimise his present. And there was a rare acknowledgement of the price paid. The Kremlin admits that 1,300 soldiers have died in Ukraine. The real number is thought to be much higher. But grieving families are told their sons and husbands have died heroes, defending the motherland. Vladimir Putin's war has not gone well. But even as Russia reflects on the cost of conflict, he seems determined to fight on. Jenny Hill, BBC News, Moscow.
The view from Moscow there. Well, Ukraine's President Zelensky has released his own video message commemorating the victory over Nazi Germany, saying his country will win its war with Russia. He accused Moscow of imitating the tactics of the Nazis by deporting hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and by using aerial bombardments to flatten cities. Meanwhile, the UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Vladimir Putin continues to make fairy tale claims to justify his invasion. Our Kyiv correspondent James Waterhouse has more details.
No rallies in Kyiv this Victory Day. In fact, nothing major is happening for the first time since Ukraine declared independence.
As the ironclad hosts of the Soviet and Germany meet in mortal combat,
the country was part of the Soviet Union in the Second World War. Millions died under German occupation, but they ultimately shared that victory. Today, there isn't much to celebrate, and Russia's accused of hijacking its meaning.
And very soon there will be 2 victory days in Ukraine, and someone will not even have one left. We won then, we will win now too. And Kreshchadik will see the parade of victory, the victory of Ukraine. Congratulations on the victory day over Nazism. Glory to Ukraine.
The meaning of Victory Day has changed. Look at this memorial. It celebrates hero cities like Kharkiv. It's marking everything it has gone through in this invasion and continues to go through. Mykolaiv in the south, the Russians are still trying to take it, but it's holding out. And it's interesting to see what was here before. This memorial also marked big battles in the Second World War, like in Crimea. An old Soviet tank once used to liberate the city, somewhere for Helena to remember her grandfather. Today's conflict has left her confused.
We are brotherly nations with Russia. Why is it shooting and bombing us? It is very unclear.
Victory Day for me is the holiday of our parents and our ancestors, Serhiy tells me. because they fought for their land. For me, Victory Day will be the day when Ukraine wins, and Ukraine will win. Everything will be Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. A word missing from Putin's speech was Mariupol, a mostly destroyed city where the last pocket of Ukrainian resistance continues to be shelled. The UK has accused Russia of ripping up both its past and its future.
Through their invasion of Ukraine, Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes.
Ukraine couldn't be further away from the liberation Russia is trying to portray. What also feels distant is peace. James Waterhouse, BBC News in Kyiv.
U.S. mortgage rates are on the rise thanks to the Federal Reserve's 0.5% rate hike last week. A 30-year fixed loan is averaging more than 5% interest, nearly double the average rate from a year ago. Home buyers were already struggling with low housing inventory and high prices. So joining us now with tips to help home buyers is Erin Sykes. She's the chief economist for Nest Seekers International. There you go. Now I see you. Let's talk about what's going on here. So, everyone's dealing with high inflation, but it's got to be tough for home buyers. How is it affecting first-time home buyers in particular?
So the most difficult part about buying a home is not actually making those monthly mortgage payments. It's getting together that initial 20% down that you need to get a mortgage. And with the continuous high inflation, home buyers are having a much harder time doing that because the rest of their life is 8, 9, 10, maybe even 15% more expensive because we do see such a lag in the numbers.
The National Association of Realtors is reporting that, of course, these mortgage rate increases can really hit buyers in the wallet. Seems like, what's a little bit of a percentage point here and there, but can really adding up to more than $250 monthly, resulting in as much as an extra $90,000 over the lifetime of a 30-year loan. What can buyers do to put themselves in a better position when they're purchasing a home?
So I do have some good news here. This is very intentional demand destruction. And what these higher rates are going to do is they're going to push down home prices. And if we see rates creep up towards 7%, we can actually see up to a 40% pullback in home prices. And of course, we've been talking about the supply and demand story for a while now and how we have a home shortage in terms of builders and being able to accommodate all of the demand out there. However, I don't want to make everybody so scared and fear-monger because this can be good. Recessions and pullbacks, they actually reset things so that there is more equilibrium in the economy, and you might, depending on your situation, actually have a better shot at getting a home at an affordable price with these higher rates.
I like that you're giving people something to hang a little hope on. But, can we expect rates or home prices to come down anytime soon? When do you anticipate that might happen?
So home prices will lag behind these rate increases by a few months. We have already started to see, even here in Florida, where it's been such a hot market, we've started to see inventory sit a little bit longer, and we've started to see price reductions. We're not having those incredibly intense bidding wars anymore. So you'll start to see through the summer shopping season, prices start to pull back. Now, it's really finding that sweet spot for individual buyers where you can still lock in a moderately low rate. 5% is kind of that tipping point. Anything below 5 is considered incredibly low. Now we're at that 5.5%, 6%. So you can still get pre-approved for your mortgage now, have a little bit of time to shop, watch those prices pull back, and really hit the ball out of the park with a good deal.
Yeah, I think that's all really good advice for people that are, hoping to make that jump into the housing market. Erin Sykes, thank you very much.